There's a new mountain bike in the Hottie Garage, and you should be seeing it at Leadville coming up, but it doesn't belong to me, Fatty. After struggling up and down the Santa Monica Mountains and occasionally back and forth on Pipeline on a gravel bike, I decided the better option for Mrs. Hottie would be a mountain bike. This bike, her new bike, is carbon, 29er, and it has Shimano components.
I agree it should be a mountain bike, and I am also building a custom mountain bike this year. It's a titanium hardtail. It's by Firefly. I am ridiculously excited about it. It is built to get me to my 30th finish and beyond. And like Mrs. Hottie's bike, my bike is going to be decked out in Shimano. For folks shopping or building complete bikes, we highly recommend speccing it with Shimano, as I have. All the new Leadville-worthy mountain bikes on the market that come with Shimano should have 12-speed shifting, and that means you get what Shimano calls Hyperglide Plus.
Yeah, HD Plus is the update Shimano made to its cassettes and chains to make shifts crisper and faster, even under load. Just imagine, you're grinding up the power line inbound and you want to go for an easier gear, but you don't want to ease up on the pedals. HG Plus allows you to make that shift while pushing hard on those pedals.
And HG Plus is not just an XTR or XT thing, it is part of all levels of 12-speed Shimano mountain bike. So whether you're on a racing mountain bike like me, or someone just looking to keep up with their partner like Mrs. Hottie, there is a performance shifting Shimano group for you. Check out all the levels of 12-speed Shimano mountain bike shifting. Head over to bike.shimano.com, and a big kiss to Shimano for being title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. It is season 7, episode 18 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I'm Fatty. We are 2/3 of the way through this season, Hottie. Oh, that's scary. I often wonder how long I am going to be able to do the Leadville Trail 100. I still feel good. I still love the race, but I know, obviously, it's not going to go on forever. On this show, we are talking with someone who agrees that Leadville does have an ultimate finish line, but the start lines can continue well into your 70s.
And here comes Eldon Nelson with 14 minutes to spare on that clock. The bragging rights and the heavy hardware. That's all you. Welcome back to your Leadville family and your finish line.
Fatty's finishing tips, little nuggets of advice to get you back to 6th and Harrison.
Hottie, I want to start this one with a fish that got away story. I think you remember we were podcasting together even then. Jonathan Vaughters himself replied to a Twitter post that I made. This is back when Twitter existed. I was wondering out loud whether it might be possible for me to break the 8-hour barrier. And he replied and agreed to train me that summer. And with Jonathan Vaughters as my coach, I worked like I have never worked before or since. He assured me, in fact, a couple days before the race that I was ready, that I had a sub-8 in the bag. And then on race day, about the time I hit the dirt, before I even started climbing St. Kevin's, I felt my saddle shifting and sagging. I knew and verified, got off my bike and looked. One of the rails on the saddle had broken. So I rode all the way from there, climbing St. Kevin's, down May Queen, up and down Power Line, all the way to Twin Lakes Dam, 40 miles into the race, standing up. My saddle out of commission. I was super lucky in that when I got to Twin Lakes Dam, my crew was able to pull a saddle off a random friend's bike and put it on mine. And I finished the race still, even with that change, in about 8:30, which means I was doing pretty good. It's a fantastic result, even with the saddle change, but I'm very confident that that broken saddle rail cost me my coveted sub-8 finish. And I'm equally confident that this rail did not break catastrophically. It's not like I was doing a big drop when it broke. It could have been detected. So a mechanical didn't ruin my race, but it did make it so that I missed an objective that I had really poured myself into. So here is the tip part. We're getting to the point in the season where our listeners should have made all the decisions they're going to be making for this race. What you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, most importantly, what you are going to ride. And it's that part that I want to share a tip on in this episode. This week, make an appointment. Go to your very best, most pro bike shop in the neighborhood. Someone with a really good pro mechanic, someone you trust, and give them your bike for the day. Tell them you want a tune-up, but more importantly, tell them to take a good hard look at everything on your bike and see if there is anything that needs to be replaced, whether it needs to be replaced now or whether it might need to be replaced in the next couple of months. This could be from chain to brake pads to rotors to spokes to tires to sealant to your saddle or to your cassette, even your frame. Tell the mechanic to leave no part uninspected, get everything resolved. And then when you are at the bike shop, tell your mechanic how important this race is to you and that you absolutely do not want a mechanical problem to be the thing that ends your race. Tip them well for the work that they've done. And then set up an appointment for another fine-tooth comb inspection of your bike, say 2 weeks before you head to Leadville. Good mechanics are busy always, and especially during the summer race season. And while there isn't a supply chain issue on most components right now, you never know what might be out of stock on August 1st. So you want to do this a couple weeks before you head to Leadville. Get everything resolved, get it double resolved in that last week in July, and maybe, go visit Cycles of Life in Leadville and have a last-minute once-over just to be safe. Be paranoid is what I'm saying. Get everything resolved and be set for Leadville.
That saddle that failed, was that a carbon railed saddle?
No, it was aluminum rails.
Aluminum rails. Okay. Yeah, I don't like the carbon rail saddle. Never have. I always stuck with tie. Tie's very strong. You're getting a titanium bike, by the way. I prefer the titanium saddles. I would suspect that with dropper posts, we're seeing fewer saddle failures these days because the dropper will move a little bit more. With the rigid post, those forces have nowhere to go but right back through your saddle as you're bouncing down. And us cross-country endurance mountain bikers, we tend to use a road-style saddle. The road-style saddles aren't quite as sturdy, so that's an area you do need to pay a lot of attention to. As far as what you can do, like Fatty was lucky, there was a saddle kind of within arm's reach or a run's reach, right? But having a spare saddle mounted to a seat post in your pit, is that overthinking it? Probably, but I've had seat posts fail on me before too, like in the middle of a training ride. Bam, there went the seat posts. Seat clamps can fail and slip and so forth. So, I think it's probably overthinking it to have that. The better piece of advice is to follow Fatty's advice and just check all that stuff like in the days leading up to the race and make sure everything is up to working order. And use, if you're going to go with a rigid post, make sure you're using something on the robust side, at least with the saddle rails. I would stay away from the carbon rails. Unless you're really, really counting grams or you're really, really in love with the ride quality of that saddle. Again, having the spare in the pit, I don't know. I kind of going back and forth. It seems like overdoing it. And especially if you have a dropper, like having a spare dropper on hand, like that all seems to be a bit cumbersome. So, but good advice. Yeah, inspection is the best way just to make sure that all that stuff is ready to go and ready to handle the forces of a rough ride, which you're going to encounter at the Leadville 100. Hey, what a great Unbound we had this year, especially the women's race with like that, what was that, a 10-up sprint finish at the end?
It was amazing.
Fantastic racing, right? The winner, Rosa Closer, wouldn't have been in that final dash were it not for Envy. Listen to Rosa on how both Envy Wheels and Envy People saved her day.
30K from the second feed stop, I hit a rock really hard, so I crashed on a downhill, and then I had a flat front tire. Fortunately, I was running insert, so I managed to keep going with the really strong lead ladies. On the downhills, I was constantly hitting the rim. But then I went to the second feed stop, and Envy did an incredible job. They did a pit stop style wheel change, so I only lost around 2.5 minutes to the front women. And then they really screamed at me and motivated me. And then I told myself, okay, I'm gonna try, or I'm gonna quit.
And we're happy to say Rosa did not quit. Instead, she got back on the lead. She rode with the women, took them all out at the line. It is simply amazing. She was able to ride on a front flat for that distance. I watched the little segments. I was terrified, but that rim held up to an amazing amount of abuse. Envy's the best.
Now, it's further evidence why Envy wheels are up for the job at any off-road event, including the Leadville 100. The M525s are as good as what Rosa was running, and it's why we recommend them to you. To check out Envy's race-winning lineup of off-road wheels, head to enve.com.
It's time to look into a crystal ball of sorts and see what it is like to race the Leadville Trail 100 as a senior citizen. It is certainly something I've been giving thought to, and we know our audience is as well. So, how, as a senior citizen, can you do such a hard event?
Last year, 6 people 70 or older started and 4 finished. In 2022, it was 3 out of 7. And we interviewed one of them. Dr. Daniel Smilkstein was the oldest to come up the red carpet at 72 years old. In this episode, we are turning to someone who wants to join the 70s club. Bob Graham first did the race in 2010, but he wants to make this year his landmark year at Leadville.
Bob Graham, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. We're really excited to talk with you about, well, your history with Leadville and your future with the race.
It's great to be here, guys.
So let's talk about your history. Let's start with that. You have a nice little place in Twin Lakes, and I think that we should start with that. Start with 2007.
Well, I didn't know anything about the race. I bought a mountain bike in 2002, but rarely used it. But in 2007, Lois and I were school teachers, and we were leaving the cabin for the summer, about the second weekend in August to get back for our teachers' meetings. And we were coming down Highway 82 by the dam, and all this traffic is backed up, and there's guys on mountain bikes coming across the highway. And it was like, wow, what's this? This is really interesting. That was the start. That was the peak of interest for me. 2008, we were out here and made a point of going to the race and watched from, I can't even remember where, watched from a vantage point or two. Of course, then 2009, Lance and Dave, or was that 2008? Was 2008 their first year?
Yeah, 2008 was their first year, and then Dave beat Lance, and then Lance came back the next year, and Lance beat Dave.
Yeah. But I'm loving, before we go any further into when you actually started on the race, I love that your first encounter with the Leadville 100 was we got in your way. that we were a traffic obstruction. No, so you were essentially in Leadville before you ever had an inkling that you might be doing this race and would be doing this race a decade and a half later.
Oh, yeah, no idea.
So maybe we should go to that for just a second. What do you love about Leadville? I mean, what were you doing? How did you pick Twin Lakes and get a cabin there?
We had friends who introduced me to Twin Lakes around 1990. And then when Lois and I got married in 1994, we honeymooned at that time, it was called the Nordic Inn. It's the Twin Lakes Inn or Lodge now, right there downtown. And we honeymooned there. And in 2001, we found ourselves, we got to get something in Colorado. And it was like, yeah, Twin Lakes, that was a great spot. We wanted to be close enough to friends in Denver or the airport. So, I mean, I love the San Juans, but wow, that's a long drive. And so we found ourselves looking around Twin Lakes, couldn't find anything. We were driving up the road, and Lois says, yeah, I think I saw a little for sale by owner sign. And we stopped, turned around, and we end up buying the place on the spot. And that's what put us there. And we love Leadville. We like Buena Vista. Can't call it Buena Vista, you know that, right? It's got to be Buena. And but both of those places have very different characters. And then, of course, we're not that far from Aspen on the other side of the mountain. So, And that, of course, has a very different character again. So we feel like we found a great spot. It's gorgeous. But Leadville, of the three towns, Leadville is our favorite town. It's gritty. It's old school. When we moved there, I guess you could still get in a fight on Friday night at the Manhattan and get knifed. Maybe you still can. I'm not sure.
Has this happened to you? I mean, have you gotten actual fist fights in Leadville?
No. That's not that. No, that is not my style. No, we've heard that you could do that, right? So yeah, that's how we got there. And then, we just got sucked into this race. And 2009 went to the first movie. So we were living in Chicago area at that time. So went to the movie, and it was like, oh man, okay, this is cool. And I retired in 2010, and that really was the key, because I said to myself, I do not want to retire and sit on a rocking chair in a porch or play golf or something. I just didn't. I wanted some mammoth challenge. And of course, there it was, sitting right in front of me and at our cabin's front door. So I trained that year, and that's the year 2010 that I found Art Fleming. And his email started as an email group. And Art was the most giving and selfless, great teacher that you could ask for. And here's a guy who was a little older than I was. He was from the Flatlands, Rochester, Michigan. So he was a Flatlander like me. He knew Leadville, every inch of the course and every part of what you needed to do, nutrition, right? Everything dialed in. And he gave freely. And it was like I didn't know anything. So, and Art knew everything. So I just, whatever Art said, I did. And I just always credit my buckles to Art Fleming. May he rest in peace.
It is so important to have a mentor. He was your personal Leadville podcast, is what
pretty much. Yeah, you're exactly right. Right, and he was that for many, many people.
I understand that, and I feel like there is a hole for me in that I never really knew Art, but you and Bonnie and Ricky and so many of the folks who were sort of in a tight-knit Leadville community, really, I hear such good things about this amazing man. It is awesome that, you are here to sort of share his legacy. So thank you so much for that.
No, you're welcome. Love that man.
And let's talk about your first training for the Leadville 100, because you were 61 years old, right?
Right.
And so you had help from a person who had a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom about the race, but you had to do a lot of work. How did you get ready to do your first Leadville at age 61?
Great question. Again, Art said this race is about miles in the saddle as much as it's about climbing. And so at that time, I had a road bike, and I started accumulating miles as soon as I could get out on a bike in Illinois, March, April, May, and just piling up miles, 60-mile rides, 70-mile rides, 80-mile rides. I don't even know if I ever did a century, but just got miles. And then whatever kind of climbing I could get, whatever kind of altitude I could get out there. So any hill. We had, where I did the bulk of my altitude training, or not altitude, but climbing training, there was a Mount Trashmore, about 5 miles. You know what I'm talking about? A landfill.
I guessed from the name,
yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah. Well, we call it Mount Trashmore. It's a landfill, and it had, you just went up it as fast as you could. You just did repeats on this landfill. That's what Flatlanders have to do, you guys. We take for granted when we live at a place where there are hills to climb that everybody has them, but they don't. Those guys coming up from Florida, mercy. getting ready for this, you can get on your trainer, I guess, and do intervals, but hills, I don't think there's any substitute.
You trained for your first Leadville by climbing up a landfill over and over again. Yeah. That is commitment. That is you're going to have breathing problems of a whole different kind when you're doing that kind of training. So,
honestly, there were days where the methane was a little overpowering. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been by a landfill. I wouldn't want to climb in it. That's horrible. So tell us about race day, your first Leadville 100. What do you remember from it? What was different than what it's like in the modern era of racing this amazing race?
I mean, overall, the race has changed some. The course has changed some, of course. But when you're in the corral before the race, I don't think anything has changed, from present to past. And that probably goes back to 1999. Now, you talk about me being a part of this, group of old timers, but I came late to that group. Maybe 2011 sounds like a long time ago now, but those guys that were there since the 90s and early 2000s, Doc Wenmark and those guys.
No, I've done Leadville before most of them. So I know about the old days. I want to know about your first Leadville.
Yeah, the first Leadville, by the way, for 2011, because I know, Bob, because I was there too with you, we had no corrals. So that's the correct, memory. Right. That might help you with you. Right? So we had no corrals that year. And that may have been the last year of no corrals.
One of the things I remember was just being super calm before the race. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I was super calm, no nerves, just this is going to be so great. And the other thing I remember about that year, I remember coming around a corner on the pipeline inbound. So where are we? Mile, 70-ish. Coming around one of those, those big U-turns in there. And saying to myself, I've always wanted to do this. I have always wanted to do this. This is so much fun. And I mean, it just sort of burst out of me. And those are the things I remember. I don't remember pain. I don't remember agony. I mean, I'm sure it was there, but
that's not what stuck with you.
Well, I do remember also there was a creek crossing back then, and that little bridge that got rebuilt every year by this Ricky and Art and those guys. They'd go out and rebuild the bridge, which just meant putting a 2x6 down.
Yeah, at the bottom of power line. Right.
Exactly, bottom of power line. And I remember in training when I was riding the course, I always walked it. Because I just that was my very first bike race of any kind, ever. So I just didn't have a lot of experience, let alone mountain biking experience. And on race day, it was like there's 15 guys behind you, and it's like, well, I'm not going to get off my bike and slow these guys down. I got to clean it. So I did, boom, right across that little board. I cleaned it. I was so proud of myself. And about 20 feet past, my front wheel went down and caught in the soft sand, and I went down like a ton of bricks.
Oh, man.
Just, my knee is bleeding, my arm is bleeding, and it was my, surface injury. Didn't stop me, and it didn't dampen my spirits. It was almost like, hey, there should be some blood, there should be some payment for doing this race.
I do know the feeling of crashing in a race and jumping back up and going and finding out only later how much that you actually injured yourself. Yeah, adrenaline is a great pain reliever for a little while. So you finished that first Leadville 100 in under 12 hours, which is an amazing accomplishment for your first time. So that was your first Leadville 100. You did it again 2 years later. Tell us about that one.
Painful from start to finish.
Why do you think that was different? Why was it harder? You've aged 2 years. You're closer to your mid 60s than your early 60s, but is that it?
No, I don't think so. I think I took training a little more for granted. I think I took the race a little more for granted. I had such great memories of 2011, and man, this is going to be Well, I did it once. I mean, this is going to be not a piece of cake, but I got this. And then
You got cocky, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I love it. No, I mean, we've all done that where you have a good day and you believe that you are entitled to nothing but good days going forward, that you somehow are, I've got this thing.
Yeah, you just earned it. And that was the year that I learned. I mean, I was in pain before St. Kevin's climb. I mean, my insides of my thighs were aching. Nothing worked. But I scraped back across the line that year in something like 11:45 or something like that, and I got another buckle. So it was a completely different race. Which, as you guys know, you've done it enough times where it's never the same race.
And you got a little bit of humility. You probably have never come back to the starting line cocky again, is my guess.
No,
that the race earned some respect from you. Now, I mean, all that said, I mean, you had a painful day. You remember it as being a tough day, but the tail of the tape is not terribly dissimilar from your first and second time. It's 11:26 versus 11:43. It's less than 20 minutes different, and you finished with a buckle both times. That wasn't the case next time. Go ahead.
And Bob, did you start at where, for both those years, where did you start in the pack? Were you at the back or were you mid-pack?
Oh, yeah. White.
You started at the back.
Whatever the white corral would be or whatever it was then, I was at the back, yeah.
You were back there by the old gym then. That's where you started.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. No, I might have been behind the gym.
Okay. Hey, did you have any athletic experience prior to getting into mountain biking?
I wrestled and played soccer in college, and then I continued playing soccer for another 35 years, playing, coaching, refereeing soccer. And I did that until my early 50s, and then I have really bad osteoarthritis in both ankles. I'm a replacement candidate. And so walking and running are out. But I can get on the bike. It's low impact, and I can go 100 miles on a bike. And so that's where I began to pick up cycling. In 1999, I did a solo transcontinental bike trip, San Francisco to Boston. It just as a kind of that was a bucket list thing. I'd always wanted to do that ever since I was a kid. But again, I never raced. I was never a serious cyclist. So, yeah.
I want to get to the present, but just really quick, 2015, you did not finish the race. You, in fact, had, if your second Leadville 100 was bad, this one was much, much worse for you. Tell us briefly what happened.
Yeah. Power line down. I'm right behind a guy. I'm on his back wheel. That was probably a mistake. And of course, I'm blaming him because we were on one of these sort of, there's these sort of flat sections on power line descent. And we were flying along, and for some reason, he hit his brakes. I have no idea why. My front wheel touched his back wheel. I was over the handlebars, and I landed full on, all weight on left knee and left palm of my hand. And, you get up and it's like, well, there's only one thing you can do is get back on the bike, and you can either ride or you can't. So I kept going. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to work through this, but I was bleeding pretty bad on the leg. I mean, I know there's worse stories than this. There's worse Leadville stories than this, but I kept going. Twin Lakes outbound, got up Columbine, came back down Columbine, came through Twin Lakes, and I left the Twin Lakes Dam, and it was like my left wrist was becoming non-functional, and I was having trouble braking. But at least that's the front brake. Still had the rear brake, but shifting, braking. I was a 3x at that time on that bike, and I said, okay, by pipeline aid station, I'm going to make a decision. And I made the right decision. I just pulled myself out of the race at mile 75 because I Honestly, I think my legs really were going, and I didn't want to be a danger to other racers because I knew I had the Sugarloaf descent, Keevan's descent, and just didn't. I was done. But I made it to mile 75.
I mean, you made it to mile 75 with a broken wrist. That's maybe speaks a lot to your toughness and maybe to your intelligence too. I don't know. It's like I said. I mean, the toughness will only get you so far. After a while, you gotta make the smart play. But that's not your last Leadville story at all. And we're just really quick. In 2017, you got your third buckle. This time you were age 67, and you just squeaked under that 12-hour mark, right?
Coming down off of Sugarloaf, I was like, well, I'm not going to buckle. I'm not going to make this. And I got to Carter Summit and was like, well, I got an hour, a little under an hour. I've never done it in an hour, but I got a little under an hour. I get to the bottom of the Keevan's descent, and there's a guy down there where you go onto the pavement, and he's going, you got a half hour, go, go, go. I'm coming up the boulevard, and Brian Fedema, bless his heart, from Cycles of Life, he's there with a whole bunch of his friends, and he recognizes me because I'm in the shop all the time, and of course he knows everybody. And he comes out, and he knew. He said, Bob, you gotta crush those pedals. You gotta crush those. And he used another word that I can't use on the air. You gotta crush those pedals. And he comes out, he gives me this big push. And basically I come up over the top of the hill on 6th Avenue. And it wasn't until I was, about 3 blocks away, and I'm hearing, we're under a minute. And then I'm approaching the red carpet. And of course, everybody's there. And because everybody's there for these 12-hour guys. The bottom line, I cross the mat. Ken fires the shotgun over my head, 11:59:59. Yeah, it was terrific. Great athletic experience of my life.
And a good lesson. I mean, you thought you were over, and you were not over. I mean, I am so glad that you did not just check out and say, well, if I can't finish, I'm not going to finish. That is, I love that. Okay.
You can do more than you think you can,
We are 100% believers in that as well. So now we're at the present, and you are doing this again. It has been a few years. It has been 5 years? Or I guess this year.
Well, 7.
Since you have done the Leadville 100. And this year, you have gotten in, and you are going to be doing this race at what age?
I'll be 74. Almost. My birthday's in September. I'll be 75 in September.
And we were talking before we started recording, and as I said then, you are a huge nerd and have done a lot of research. Not a lot of people every year have done this race not a lot of people do this race over the age 70.
Can I give you some numbers?
Please do.
I went through the Leadville race archives, 1994 to 2023, and there's somewhere between 32 and 33,000 people who have lined up on the starting line of this race in those years. Of those, 47 of them have been over 70 years of age. And of those, there have been 26 70-plus-year-old buckle winners. And of those 26, 20 of them are, some of them have earned more than one buckle, like Art Fleming has 3 buckles, Jeff Stevenson, Dennis Kaiser, Dennis Loy, and Dan Smilkstein, they each have 2. So there's 20 different buckle winners in the age group. So it's a very, very small group, and I feel like I want to be an ambassador for that group. As I'm comparing myself to Rebecca Rush, who is an ambassador for getting women into mountain biking, women and girls. I really want people to understand that when you're a septuagenarian, you can do this. Now, can I do it? I don't know.
Hey, Fatty, I got a special package in the mail the other day. The bag said DNA cycling, so I knew before opening it what that meant. My custom order was in.
Oh, exciting. I got one too. It's like being a kid at Christmas. I immediately tore into that thing. I mean, I knew what was inside, but still.
Yeah, I went for the jersey with the pink shoulders and the dark blue lower half.
Nice.
Fits perfect, looks great. I love the big, bold Leadville.fm on the back. Expect to see me in the feed zone with it on this year. I've been wearing the bright yellow DNA podcast jersey for 3 years running, but I think the new one will be coming out.
Now, it is a good-looking jersey. I got both, obviously, but I don't know. It's going to be a tough call which one to wear this year. Whichever one I don't wear this year, I'll wear next year. Either way, I'm going to be looking good and feeling good, and it is all thanks to DNA, who, in addition to getting our designs spot on, took care of all the ordering, all the fulfillment.
Yep, and the whole process took just a couple months. Now, the deadline is passed for a custom kit in time for this year's Leadville, but you can still get something started in time for cyclocross or gravel or winter training or whatever. DNA is not just about Leadville. They'll make a kit for whatever you want to celebrate. Hell, make some for your kids and their birthday party. I mean, that would be cool, and DNA could do it. Just go over to DNAcycling.com and start working on your design and tell them the Leadville podcast sent you. Hey, your Fatty's finishing tips on organizing your gels a couple episodes back created a nice follow-up discussion on our Slack channel. Folks sharing their approach to keeping their fresh gels separate from their used ones. Now, a few were wondering why we didn't suggest a gel flask. I've used these at Leadville and other races, but not you, Fatty?
I have, but they're just not really for me. I'm not a fan of the risk that's involved with a flask. If you lose one, you've lost a couple hours worth of nutrition, which can be a problem. Because they are 5 servings, you're getting the same flavor 5 times in a row, which I get tired of. I don't feel like I'm very precise with these flasks at getting the right amount out of the flask with each pull. So I don't know whether I just got 10 grams of carbs or 15 or 20. And I've had one of these flasks leak when I put them in top down in my jersey, which is my way. Maybe I just didn't pop it closed all the way, but it's still a problem. So no flasks for me.
Well, you're not selling them, but I'm gonna. I love them. I love just having the one thing to go for. I've never had the problems you spoke of. I'm fine with the one flavor. I'm fine with not knowing precisely how much is in them. And good news is that you, if you're like me, can get a gel flask from the feed. They have the old school soft plastic ones with the Hammer logo. And we don't mean your Hammer, Fatty, by the way. We mean Hammer as in Hammer Nutrition right now. There's also a cool one from Goo. It is made of a Hydro Flask material, kind of like your hydration pack bladder, much softer, less bulky, and it has fill lines so you know how much you have used or how much you put in. I like them. There's no garbage to manage, just as Fatty said, just like Fatty said, just don't drop them.
For sure. It is getting a little bit harder to find those bulk bottles of gels for easy refill, but you still can find them, and you can empty individual packs into a flask as well. I'll be sticking with my proven method, but like we've said time and again, when it comes to eating and drinking, find a system that helps keep you on top of your fueling and hydration. The feed has everything you need, no matter your style of eating. You just got to fill in the blanks. The point here is find the mix that works for you. Keep on eating, keep on drinking.
Claim your $80 in annual credit at thefeed.com/Leadville. Register your email, verify your phone number, then spend your first feed credit of $20 right away on a gel flask or gel or whatever. It's a great deal. More on our Age is Just a Number episode with Bob Graham.
Well, let's talk about how you're preparing to do it, because I also believe that you will be able to do it. I mean, you've got the experience. You're not treating this lightly. You have time at altitude, which I think is a significant benefit. If there is anyone who can do it, I don't see why it would not be you. So tell us, how are you preparing? How are you training to do this race as a 74-year-old?
I'm doing a couple things I've never done before because I've never really had to, but now I feel like I have to. I've lost flexibility over the years, and that, of course, that comes with age. I've lost pliability. I've been working since January seriously on both of those, just stretching exercises, rolling, working with the balls, and working on getting the muscles more pliable, more flexibility. And then I've been climbing. I've been going out with my buddies Frank Gepfrich and Mike Iddings, and we go out and we will climb 4,000 to 6,000 feet on a weekend. And I'm retired. I'm driving a school bus, but I have a big donut of time in the middle of the day, and I'll get out to Green Mountain down here, and I'll do hill repeats on the Fire Road on Green Mountain. So I've been trying to do a lot of ascending, and then I'm trying to mix that with building miles on the bike. And the other thing that I'm doing is I have a calendar of races. I just did the Whiskey Off-Road down in Prescott. I was one of two 70-year-olds out of 300 guys in the 50-mile race. That's a typical thing. I did Austin Rattler last November. I was the only 70-year-old there. I really would like to see, well, it's coming. That is coming. So, I'll do, there's a race up here in the foothills called the Hundito. I'm doing the 40-mile Hundito in June. I'm going to do the Firecracker in Breckenridge in July. I'm going to climb Mount Blue Sky. That used to be Mount Evans. I'm going to do Mount Blue Sky once or twice. I'm doing the stage race, and then game time.
Bob, when you say it's coming, you are a baby boomer. Like, you're in the heart of that generation. There are folks still coming to your age, though. Like, the baby boom is roughly post-World War II, right up to my year, although I don't consider myself a baby boomer. I'm 64. It's, but those folks are all coming into that age group, right? And that's your point here, right? That there's more 70-year-olds coming.
Oh, absolutely. And see, the key here is we don't have role models for this. Our parents, my dad climbed Half Dome at Yosemite, once a year, and that was his big achievement, and it was a pretty good one for the early 1950s. But we don't have role models, so we're just trying to figure out how to set the bar here. But Mike, you're exactly right. There's more and more guys. Let me give you one more nerdy statistic here. Between 1994 and 2008 at Leadville, there were 0 70-plus entries. Between 2008 and 2012, that next, it's a small number of years, but there were 3 entries. And since 2013, in the last 10 years, there have been 45 entries. And in 2017, 2019, and 2023, there actually were full podiums of buckle winners in the age group. So in that sense, it's glacial, but it is going to change. And all these guys that are in the 60s now, and there's a ton of them, they're not going to be like you, Fatty. You said yourself, you hope to be able to do it and keep doing it.
Yeah, no one knows what the future holds, right? But I do love. I've been doing this for 26 years now. I do like the idea of being able to do it for another 15, another 20. I don't know. What does the 50-year buckle look like? Maybe I'd be the guy to ride it. I don't know. It's possible, right?
You have to rent a U-Haul for it. That's
yeah. Todd Murray, John Callahan, they're going to be the ones to find out those big buckle sizes first. But I do love the idea of following in the footsteps. So what are you planning for your day, your race at Leadville 100 this year? How are you going to pace yourself? How are you going to fuel? What are you going to do? I'm guessing there are a lot of, 50-plus-year-olds, a lot of, 60-plus-year-olds who don't have as much experience on the course, don't have as much experience at altitude, who can learn some from you.
This is where I feel like this is the other race category that I fit into, is this kind of 11 and a half to 12 hour guy or woman who is just, we're always wondering, can I make it? Can I get the buckle? Can I do it? I don't know. My race plan is I I try to race my race. I try to stay within myself. I try to know that it's 104 or 3 or whatever it's going to be this year. Well, yeah. Are they going to do the outward bound thing? We'll find out. But whatever it is, for us, it's a long day on the bike. We're not Keegan Swenson. We're never going to see that guy except when he flies past us on the dam or something. And we still have a long, long ways to go. So I don't know. My race plan is I kind of go just about as hard as I feel like I can all the time. I'm a tortoise of a climber. That's probably I think I would be a much faster Leadville finisher if I could climb. And I just know that's my weak area. Then I'm working on it. But guys, race is almost the wrong word for guys like me. We just have to go out and just hit it and stay within ourselves but you can't slack, and you don't want to stop. Keep moving. My friend Tom Lining, back in 2011, he gave me this advice. He said, you can get a buckle if you keep moving. And I actually drew that on my handlebars in felt tip pen, keep moving. And also, by the way, I find it to be a great model for aging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stay in motion. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. I 100% agree that it is a different kind of race, but I want to push back on that it isn't a race, because whether you are racing the clock or other individuals, Leadville 100 is very much a race for every person who is in there. And I think taking it seriously as that, I mean, I don't care about the finish times of other people. I wish them all well, but I'm not competing against them, but I am still definitely competing.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just with that in mind, I'm curious, have you thought about, I mean, are you wearing a heart rate monitor? Have you figured out how and what you're going to eat? And there are specific things, whether you're racing against people or a clock, that you can do. And that I would think that for someone who is 70 plus years old would be even more important to do. Knowing your heart rate or your power might be more important than it is for you when you were 61 years old.
I actually just had my annual physical this past April. Talked to my doctor about the race, talked about the stroke history of my family. And so, he recommended a test, which I have just done, that shows that I'm, the heart is pretty clean. The valves are pretty clean. And that was reassuring. So I've done that. And by the way, I would encourage, don't just assume, I'm a Leadville racer, so I don't never need to go see a doctor. That's just not true, because in 2015, who was it? Scott Ellis, who died up at the top of power line inbound. And, it was a sad thing. And it was just basically had a heart attack up there.
It's a sad thing, and it's not isolated either. Mike Volk, who was one of the winners of the Leadville 100, had a heart attack while out on a training ride. You can be incredibly fit and have problems with your heart that you're unaware of. So yes, absolutely.
Correct.
As we get into our 40s, into our 50s, into our 60s. Yeah, absolutely. Be aware and take care. So so going back to the question, do you wear a heart rate monitor? Do you know what your good range is for this race, or the power that you want to put out for this? I know I'm getting nerdy, but I feel like you can take it.
Oh, no, right. No problem. I do wear a heart rate monitor. It's pretty much the only techie thing I do. I don't have a power meter. I don't have an indoor trainer. I have one bike. I train on it. I race on it. So like I said, all of my friends have like 12 bikes, and I've got one. but I do keep track of the heart rate. But I also, when I'm riding, like with friends, I'll just periodically, I'll look at my Garmin, and I'll look over at them, and I'll say, hey, what heart rate you guys running right now? And they'll go, oh yeah, 125, 128, and I'm running like 152. I just know that I run higher than the average guy who's fit, and I'm for my age, I'm fit, and I don't know. And I know, like, there's other guys my age who are still running very low heart rates. Mine just run higher, and I don't know. I just sort of, it is what it is. It's just going to be what it's going to be.
Right. Well, you've got a good ceiling, it sounds. And also, as someone who actually spends a fair amount of your summers in Leadville or Twin Lakes, in that area at 10,000 feet, you're able to actually use your heart rate as a meaningful measurement, as opposed to most people who come into Leadville and your heart rate starts lying to you about your floor changes, your ceiling changes, and it's not a great metric for what your pace ought to be. As we've talked about recently, power seems to be more of the modern metric to use.
Yeah, but you are correct. That's correct. Being at altitude really, really helps. And I know it's an advantage I have over a lot of guys, no matter what the age is.
So how are you going to fuel?
I followed Art. Year one, I didn't know anything. So Art Fleming, and I mean, he was a scientist, sports science, sports medicine. And he said and believed, and I know what you guys say, it's an eating contest, it's a race designed as an eating contest, or eating contest designed as a race, or disguised as a race. That's it, I think, isn't it?
There you go.
Right. And Art said, no solids, liquid, 100% from start to finish of the race. And he had this formula of like an overdose of heat mix with some nun tabs, and 70 ounces of this to Twin Lakes outbound, 70 more ounces back to Twin Lake, up Columbine and back to Twin Lakes, 70 more ounces of the finish line, and you're going to get a buckle. And I was like, I didn't know anything, so I did it. And that's what I have done for all 4 of my races. I'm actually thinking this year that, I hope Art's not listening, that there might be some places like top of Columbine where you're coming downhill for the next 45 minutes it takes me to get back to Twin Lakes. There's places, the pipeline, where maybe I will eat and have some bacon or something, and get some kind of solids in my system, because I have had trouble cramping, and I think that can help me there. But I've been afraid to change it because I got 3 buckles using Art's system. So, the common knowledge is, well, whatever you've been doing, don't change it. Well, what about guys who are coming again from Delaware or Maine or Florida? They're coming up to elevation, and it's like, well, don't change anything. Well, the altitude is changing everything. So how do you know on your first race what's going to work? You just have to, I guess you just got to go with what's been working for you and hope it works.
So when Art said no solids, did he include gels in that, or do you take gels in addition to the fluid calories?
He included gels, believe it or not. He said anything solid. He said, here's what it was. Your brain needs every bit of oxygen it can get. When your stomach is digesting solids, it's taking oxygen away from your brain, and we get race stupid as it is, and you need it all. That was his take.
So Art said no gels, just drink all your calories, correct?
Yeah.
That's the Art method of fueling for Leadville.
I asked Art specifically about that. Now I cheat on that. I don't like gels. They're too gooey for me. So I do the chews. But it's the same thing.
Yeah, they're essentially the same thing. You're right.
But I do choose.
How has bike choice changed for you over the years? And what are you going to be on now?
Specialized. My bike is a 2020 Specialized Epic with the brain technology, so it's a dual suspension. I love that thing. Here's another thing I learned from Art, and I'm just going to pass this along to whoever can use it. Art said, you need to stand. You need to stand every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Change your body position. Stand, pedal standing. Even if you're on the flats, pedal standing for about 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, then sit back down again. But you just need that change of position. And what I like about the Epic with the Brain is I can stand. I don't have to flip a lever. The Brain takes care of everything. So I'm a hardtail when I'm standing, and I'm a dual suspension when I need it going down hills.
Were you always on full suspension even when you first started doing the race?
No, my first bike was a 1999 Trek 8000,
Really?
aluminum frame, pole brakes,
Nice.
tubed tires, 26 inch, and I loved that bike.
Triple. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still have it.
Fun.
So yeah, I've evolved a little bit.
Well, I am looking forward to following up in just a couple of months and finding out how your day went, what new key learnings you have about the Leadville 100 at age 74. And I want to finish with this. What do you predict as your finishing time?
I just knocked 40 minutes off of my previous best time at the Whiskey Off-Road. So I'm feeling where I am right now. If I can keep on this path, honestly, I would, this is where I don't want to sound cocky again. All right. But I would like to shoot for my best time, my best Leadville time. So I have this sort of 11:15 time in my head. But honestly, you guys, 11:59:59, I would be thrilled with that.
Let's imagine that you finish 11:15. You're 74 years old. Are you coming back at 75?
To be announced.
Now you're sounding like a pro, getting cagey, and I would say you got to commit, man. You got to commit. You got to keep doing this. I want you to be the first guy to finish at age 80. I think you can.
Well,
someone's going to finish this race at age 80.
Yeah. Well, right now, Fred Schmidt is the gold standard at 79. Got a ways to go. And I don't know who's entering this year. I know Doc Wenmark. I had breakfast with Doc about a month ago. Doc is back in it. I know he and I for sure are two. Who knows, is Dan Smilkstein coming back this year? He was at a wedding or something last year. I listened to your podcast with him. I kind of hope he's back. Maybe there's going to be 2 or 3 other guys, and maybe some new guy who's never done it, who's like amazing. But right now, Doc at 76, if he can buckle, he would be the second oldest. And I'd be the third oldest if that's the way it is right now. But I care less about that than I do just about getting across the finish. I want to buckle.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
honest.
And that's what we want for you. I would love to see a 70 plus full podium. That would be the dream. And I want to see you on it.
I'd love to be on it. But if I buckled and wasn't on it, wouldn't that be great? Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Bob, fantastic having you on the show. Let's talk again.
My pleasure, you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again to Bob Graham. Great conversation. He's going to be one I will be watching this August, along with all the other racers in that 70 plus category. Will I be there one day? Oh, I sure hope so. It's hard to say, but stories like Bob's and Dr. Smilkstein's sure give me hope.
While Fatty is pondering racing into his 70s, you can be sorting out Leadville details with like-minded folks on our Slack channel. We cover a lot on this show, but sometimes it's good to go a little deeper, and you can do that at leadville.fm/Slack.
And if you like the show, go to wherever you listen. Please give us a 5-star rating, write us a review. See all the ways you can do this at leadville.fm.
Good luck in your Leadville training and planning. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the starting line.